Hello, I'm Dr. Stephen Hassan with another episode of the Influence Continuum. And today we have Dr. Melanie Trowbridge, who's a licensed naturopathic doctor in the state of Washington. And if you don't know about naturopathy, this is your woman, because we're going to get into it today. We're also going to have a very interesting conversation about AI and what's going on online and mental health. But let me just, if you don't mind, Melanie, I'll say some more things, nice things about you. You're in private practice, but you also work with a local nonprofit called Inside Health Institute. You work with all persons, but focus on women in disaffected and disadvantaged communities, as well as women who've been trafficked. You are their engagement director. You're a member of the American and Washington Association of Naturopathic Physicians, attended the accredited university focused on natural medicine, Bastyr. Did I pronounce that correctly? You're also an ordained minister for interfaith celebrant ceremonies, and you are for peace and happiness and love and goodness, all the things we believe in, freedom of mind, the power of coming together, connecting communities with different collaborative projects. And, but you were a techie before you became a physician, if I'm remembering correctly. You worked in Seattle in the 90s at Microsoft headquarters, Expedia, Concur Technologies, ground floor technical support for large-scale software rollouts on global server systems. And you strongly believe in ethical AI development in medical fields. Recently took a 6-week course on AI in healthcare at the MIT Sloan program. So, and I'm particularly interested in your healing, but also the interface of technology, because I am just really feeling like humans were not created to be in digital space 8 to 12 hours a day, unregulated social media. So I want to pick your brain, if I may, and ask you to share your expertise and how you see what the 2024 is doing to us.
Delighted. Yeah, I would definitely be delighted.
Great. So where to start? Do you want to start with explain naturopathic medicine, maybe? We'll start with that and then go into AI.
That's a great place to start. So I come from a family of medical persons. My father was in the Navy, in nursing and training in the military. So I grew up around hospital atmospheres. My mother is a neuropsychologist. So much of my life, I kind of grew up in a medical atmosphere. And so after my stint in technology, I really looked into going into medicine and what going into medicine could offer not me, but patients and my community around me. And what I came to find was that I didn't really fit into a lot of the ideas in Western medicine. I grew up, because I was a military child, I grew up in Japan for a brief period of time. And I really, I guess you would say, gelled with Eastern philosophies a little bit more in medical or healthcare settings. So when I started with looking into Bastyr University, one, I wanted to make sure that we were still a science-based university. That was something that was really important to me because I do believe in fact-based, science-based medicine. Yep. And I wanted to make sure that we were on a good page with that. And I found that was definitely true. The thing that really gelled with my personality was the 6 principles of naturopathic medicine that Bastyr proclaims, which is basically that you treat people, one, as an individual. Every patient is different. And every patient comes in with their autonomy as a patient. So that was really important to me, is to make sure that I was respecting the autonomy of each patient. The other thing that really I liked about it was this idea of they call it the vis. It's the vis medicatrix naturae, but it's basically stimulating and supporting the body's own mechanisms of healing, and that really was something that I believed in strongly. Is that each of us has abilities to heal, and if we can stimulate those abilities to heal, then we can get to good places. The other thing, so then there's to identify the root cause of what the problems are. I used to, a long time ago, I was in a journalism track at University of Florida. And one of the things that I really liked was, again, the idea of fact-checking and fact-based philosophies. And so to me, when you identify the root cause of a problem, whether that be in medicine, in society, or in other types of healthy relationships, then you basically, by identifying the root cause, then you can get to a better solution.
Sure.
So I really like that. Some of the other things was they believe in addressing things as naturally as possible and as gently as possible. And we can talk about, as we go on, how that might look in a technological or AI-driven future. Like, how do we continue to address things as naturally and gently as possible when we're looking at things like neural implants or other technological implantations into humans. So that really interests me from that aspect. And then also just to teach patients, that's a real big doctrine in naturopathic medicine, is that by teaching people about their bodies, how their bodies naturally function, then you get to this new level where the patient is driving their health. And I think that really fits into my feelings, and probably with freedom of mind.
I was going to say, you are singing my beliefs as a clinician, every single point. And I really do believe we are embodied minds, and that part of mind control is that we're separated from our bodies and we're cut off from really tuning in, because our bodies are often telling us, get out of there, this is not okay. And then we override it if we're in a mind control thing. Anyway, I want you to continue. I also want to mention my niece is a anesthesiologist by training, but went into naturopathic medicine. So anyway, there's a family connection to this approach, which I love. I think everything makes so much sense.
It really did make sense to me. And I think that was something that was really important to me, because I did come from such a fact-based, science-based. I mean, we grew up on research articles and NIH studies. So to me, that was the part that I really wanted to make sure when going into naturopathic medicine that I was respecting the idea that there are things that we know about the human body, and there are things that we know about anatomy and physiology, oncology, gastroenterology, neurology. These are things that we already know and we've already established. But there's also some things that we don't perhaps fully understand in human evolution and in the human body. So the last, just to make sure that we round out those points that
please, and we'll add this to the blog. We'll list all 6 points for people to get a little summary.
Great, because I think it is really important. Those principles of naturopathic medicine are really important to how people practice. And so the last one is just prevent illness when possible. And I think that's the other part that really, as soon as I came out from school, I started, I had the fortunate situation of doing public speaking for one of our local hospital systems, and going around and presenting more kind of standard healthcare topics in a naturopathic way. And so I visited a lot of senior centers, a lot of the county facilities, and did a lot of talks. And they wanted me, again, to come from that place of integrative, holistic, alternative, but also fact-based. And so when you're working in doing research, And then as well, speaking to, let's say, for instance, I've spoken to a lot of hospitals,
Yep.
and you're speaking to, gastroenterologists, for instance,
Right.
endocrinologists. They not only want to hear how you're going to implement this holistic idea, but then they also want to hear what's your facts behind it? Where did you get
Yeah.
this research from? So,
Yeah. So I guess I can't, there's so much more I want to say, but I have to ask you because we're experiencing this radical surge in COVID and respiratory illness about wearing a mask indoors in a crowded environment because I wear a mask in a crowded indoor environment. What sayeth thou about naturopathic fact-based approaches to this whole topic?
that is such a great question. In our community, luckily I'm part of a collaborative community of
Mm-hmm.
naturopathic doctors as well as mental health counselors and other persons of
Mm-hmm.
medical intent. And so it's really great to have that team, I guess you'd say,
Yep.
so that you can kind of talk about, well, what are you seeing on your side of things? Like, how is this affecting mental health? And so I think, again, we have to go back to that idea of treating the individual, but also protecting the greater society, right?
Right.
I mean, it's a two, I really love the idea of the balance scales. Whenever I get confused about life, I go back to that balance scale, right?
Mm.
Like, on one hand, we have on that balance scale this idea that an individual may be suffering with their mental health from being more isolated, maybe due to a disability or a immune vulnerability.
Right.
And then on the other side of the scale, we see as well this idea that we need to protect each other in society.
Right.
So I think when it comes to things like, vaccinations, masking, these are conversations that I think require a great deal of care as well as patient autonomy, but we also have to be very careful about looking out for the most vulnerable in society.
Right.
Yeah. So for me personally, if I am in a situation where it's better to mask, let's say large situation, we just came back from everyone flying across the country.
Right.
We masked.
Now there's a big surge of
Mhm.
incidents because of that, and people coughing and being sick and not testing and
Right.
saying I'm not feeling that bad, but not thinking about all of their relatives and friends they're going to be exposing.
Right. So I think recently we had an exposure here.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I did was run upstairs and take a test. It's that easy. It's just really easy to just think about the people that are around me. And I would really encourage others to just think about not only what they need in their health, but also as a greater society, what we can do to help protect each other.
Right. And I'll just add, there are masks and there are masks, and then there are masks that are worn below the nose, and 95s that are worn properly. And if you're going to wear a mask, they should be good masks and they should be worn properly.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are times where maybe we get together as a group in my family.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we get together as a group and we've all agreed, it's okay. We're all feeling okay with not masking in that situation. I think we're all, we all at this point have this kind of idea of what is it going to look like going forward.
Yeah.
And it may look like treating on a day-to-day basis. Depending on if I wake up with a little bit of a scratchy throat, it's no big deal for me to throw on a mask and go,
Right.
into public.
Right. Here in Massachusetts and hospitals, people are all wearing masks again because
are they?
I guess they're measuring the wastewater content of COVID and it's up a certain percentage. And it's like, nope, we got to do masks again. Although I don't think it's mandated, but it's mandated within private hospital institutions, but not for everybody. But let's go on, because so far we've established really a wonderful, in my opinion, I'm biased because it's resonating with me, a mind-body communal consciousness where we're trying to do minimum to help the body heal itself, to prevent people from feeling isolated. I love collaborative team approaches to issues because, frankly, nobody's perfect. Nobody has the perspective. But if you have a group together that you trust, and especially if somebody gets designated as the contrarian and you can rotate that role to just, whatever we're talking about, you take the contrarian position. It elevates everyone towards a search for truth.
I agree. It's a nice environment. Coming out of the COVID, kind of staying at home and doing more Zoom meetings. We all got very good at Zoom meetings during that time. But as we're kind of coming into this different space, and I'd say it's different, but some things are still challenging. Like we mentioned, we just had, Thanksgiving and Christmas for many of us, or holiday season for all of us. And when we came out of these places where we traveled all the way across the country, we realized oh, okay, well, flu is up. And so, but we're also trying to go on with our lives. And so it's really nice, I think, to have all these people around, these trusted individuals around that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. I think it's a really innate aspect of medicine, especially ethics, medical ethics. That we learn a lot by that.
Yep. So I'm going to ask you to talk more about the technology side and what you're seeing, and because frankly, people like Jeff Hinton, who resigned from Google and said, I'm really worried about emergent technology, that we're creating super minds that are out of control. That we're not controlling the technology, and it's a runaway train in a sense. So I would love to hear your thoughts and your recommendations.
Well, I'm really honored. One of the thoughts is I really enjoyed. I took your course on healthcare and cults for healthcare. And I think it was called Cults for Professionals, was it?
Yeah, so a foundational course, Understanding Cults, and I have one for clinicians with CE and one for everybody else that wants to learn but doesn't need the psychological CE credits or the medical credits.
Well, I really enjoyed it because I felt like in healthcare right now, we really need to kind of up our game, if you will. Technology hit healthcare in a way that I don't think we all saw coming. We knew there was a shift from ICD-9 to ICD-10, and we all thought, oh, we're getting more diverse in how we're selecting health quantitative data or qualitative data. But then the question came, so why are we doing this? And as we're kind of discovering in healthcare, is a lot of us are kind of waking up to this artificial intelligence reality that is now in healthcare, and looks like it's here to stay in healthcare. So what I decided to do was, in my life, in my book, what I do when I get a little afraid of something is I try to investigate more. Like what information, who's the experts out there, and what information do they have to offer me on artificial intelligence? And I kind of felt like a little bit of the person of the field that needed to go into that because of my background in technology.
Sure.
I felt kind of set up for going into that. So I actually worked in Microsoft headquarters as a contractor in a server lab back in Windows 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. I was I think there were maybe 2 women working in that closed server integration lab for Windows 2000. It was myself and one other woman, and then it was the rest were gentlemen. We can talk about the good and the bad of that. But what I can say is that it really opened my eyes to the tech world and what the tech world is focused on. The tech world is focused on achievement rapidly and an integration of server systems or integration of database technology in a very rapid way. I remember when I worked at Concur Technologies, there was a database developer who I sat in his office. This was a long time ago, and he kind of laid out what data warehousing looked like and how that would be used at the checkout counter, how that would be used to perhaps track different aspects of our systems, and then ultimately how that could down the road. And he actually sat there and kind of predicted artificial intelligence and how eventually we will get to the point where there's a very good level of knowledge about who we are as innate individuals and what our preferences are. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. When it comes to healthcare, it can be a very intimidating thing.
Yeah, and that was before the development of digital healthcare records, right? 2000.
That's correct. Yes. So now we have this digital recording systems, and they are, we do use HIPAA protected information, but from what I understand, once that data is stripped out, any of the HIPAA points are stripped out, there are companies not only utilizing health data, but also using our health data on our little digital devices that we wear, and there's not a lot of confidential information. There's not a lot of protection for those little digital devices that we wear to track our sleep, to track our eating habits, to track,
Yeah. So I read Nita Farahani's book, Battle for the Brain. She is a law professor, and she's very, very concerned about cognitive security is her term, that all of this, these headbands are being created to monitor our brain activity, not only that, but our heart and our breathing, etc. And there's no data privacy protections, and people are trying these things out, whether it's for video gaming or whatever, and they just want the enjoyment of the ease of function, but there's no thought of, can some bad actor buy my information and create an AI algorithm that can make me believe in QAnon or make me believe I'm a space alien from another dimension? And I believe that's what's happening right now by bad actors, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, or Christian right-wing extremists using psyops intentionally to create polarization and confusion. So I'm freaked out personally. I'm just very, very worried.
I think there's reason to, and we'll go back to those, the balancing, right? And that's what I keep bringing myself back to, so I can sleep at night. There is one of the reasons I went into the MI, AI, and healthcare is I wanted to see. I knew MIT Sloan would be a reputable organization. I'd worked with their climate inroads, artificial intelligence monitoring of climate, and a way to basically breach the climate divide, if you will. So I knew that they were an organization that was working in technology to help assist humanity in going forward in a more healthy way. And so there was someone I trusted. and I came out of the course, I should say, with a level of new knowledge, but also still maintaining that trust. But there's also some things that I do have concern about. So some of the good things I would say about what I see in artificial intelligence technologies that it really excite me are this idea that patients are bringing in. They're bringing in their Fitbit. They're bringing in their Google Watches or whatever they're bringing in to basically monitor their health data. And they're willing to share that with me in an office setting. This is my sleep records for the last, so on and so. And so it's kind of neat from a medical perspective, the idea that you don't just get this time with this patient, but you get this long-term look at their overall health. And you know that they're looking at it too. So that helps with preventative health. And it's neat to see people taking an interest in their health as well.
Yeah, and sleep is so vital, and we're sleep deprived as a country. But it's going back to naturopathic, you want the body to heal itself, but you need that sleep, 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. And so many people are not getting that. So I hear what you're saying.
True. It's true. And so I do like the idea that people are interested in their health. And but I do question, where's that data all going? Like, if I'm able to look at it in the office, where's it all going? And who is the ethical supervisor behind that? Like you and I, as in the medical healthcare and psychology fields, we have certain standards that we're held to.
Right.
And we have certain legal organizations that watch us and make sure that we're holding to those standards.
Yep.
There in the tech field, there is, to my knowledge, I don't really think there's any kind of ethical. These guys are just, and I say they're mostly guys. We have only 22 to 26% women in artificial intelligence, and the diversity is pretty low too. So we have a lot of kind of the that drive going in of let's get the newest system, let's get it out there, and then there's the question of who has it.
Yeah, and the Center for Humane Technology, who did Social Dilemma documentary, Asa Raskin and Tristan Harris, are really trying to blow the whistle and say we need technology that serves humans and not us serving the technology. And they just talk about this competitive, energy that rushes forward because they don't want their competition to develop something faster than them. But that just gets rid, because the incentive is money and having more market share. So Microsoft is, bought into OpenAI with their Edge browser. Google's has their own version of AI that they're trying to get out in Chrome. And there are all these other competing AI systems, but the folks who are the ethicists are going, where is this going, people? There are no guardrails. And they succeeded in getting Biden to write an executive order, a step in the right direction about AI. But business is way ahead of government and always will be, I'm afraid.
I'd agree, and I think I read that that White House briefing. I think you'd call it would be on AI and how the plans for rollout, and it's a good step. It's a really good step. And then we have in the Euro, they also European Union just came out with their own version. Right. So it's great to see nations in general coming forward and saying, hey, there does need to be some ethical guidelines around this because it's developing very rapidly.
Yes.
And then there's the question of neural implants. That's something that's definitely on my mind.
Yeah, please share.
I think again, the ability for technology to become really helpful in the range of disability, otherwise ability, is fantastic. I really love, I've watched a lot of the demonstrations of the neural implants. from different companies.
Mm-hmm.
To see, again, that idea that, we can't fear these things and just keep fearing them. We have
Right.
to learn them. And so, it's really neat to see someone with ALS being able to communicate via a neural implant.
Right.
That's really neat. And I think that for some people, this can be revolutionary for getting them out of this loneliness space where they can't communicate.
Yes.
On the other hand, as we start to go into things like we're talking about where this can go, that's when I got a little bit concerned. They
Right.
started talking about, what about anxiety disorders? What about depression, chronic depression? Could we use it in chronic depression? Could we use it in, and they started going down this list of other areas that neural implants could be used. And so I think one thing we see in medicine often is great medicines being developed, a lot of money going into developing those great medicines, and then a question of, but how else can we use this great technology? So when I see someone with a severe disability, such as ALS, being able to communicate via their computer, I'm excited. When I
Sure.
hear that there's a potential for that to be used in people with chronic depression or anxiety, I start to say, but how much should we use this technology? Who should use this technology?
Well, that goes back to minimalist intervention, right? And empowering the individual to be in control of their own mind, body, and not make people dependent on externals. I've been going to AI conferences at MIT, and I went to a Brain Mind conference at the University of California, San Francisco. I saw a video of a woman who had a bad stroke, who was unable to speak at all. And they had an implant, and they used her voice from before the stroke, and she could think, and sentences could come out on a screen in her voice. And her husband was crying.
Yeah.
It was so profound. But at all these conferences, no one was talking about bad actors using this for brainwashing cults, etc. Jeffrey Hinton talked about cults. He's one of the few that actually named the word cult with AI. But there's just needs to be more attention to ethical approaches here. And, for me, my work from taking my course and reading my books about the influence continuum and the bite model, and how we need to really respect a person's authentic self and their conscience, their ability to think for themselves, their ability to say no, to question, as well as organizations having healthy leaders and checks and balances, and not, the ends justify the means. Well, we need to make money, so we're going to do whatever, or we have to do it, or else our enemies may do it first. So we have to develop these biological warfare things, and yikes. And we don't have the wisdom. We have the technology of the gods, but we don't have the wisdom to use this technology. So it's very concerning.
It is concerning. And I think having been in the technology industry, there wasn't that ethical overlay.
Right.
And so I think, I see from the medical perspective, we protect data, and we I know I am very careful. I just took a updated class on AI and coding, because I wanted to know how it was being used in the coding fields. So it's we've got continuing education credits. We have to stay up on our field. We have to, I know that personally, I have to go through the guidelines for my state health association constantly to make sure that I'm within standard. So in the medical field, we have these, I would say, very strict regulations on how we utilize data. I have to get a consent form from my patient for any type of, communications.
Right.
And that's a signed consent form.
Yeah.
So to me, seeing these two fields back and forth between the two of them, there's one in which data is just a object, right? In technology, it's an object. It may be monetized, and then also it is kind of like a win, if you will, right? Like it's like on the slot machines, it's like ding, 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 ding. It's like the more data we can get out of people, fantastic. That's awesome.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Yep. So I want to push you a little bit more to what can we meaning anyone listening to this that is thinking about this, what can we do to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and what can we do with our communities, with our politicians and regulators? I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on that.
That's great. And yeah, I think we definitely could spiral into a place of like, oh dear, and I think it's really important for all persons at this time to find ways that they can run their life within this new place of data being everything. And so one of the things I want to talk about is from a naturopathic perspective.
Please.
And I think that a lot of people in the naturopathic world may not understand how persons seeking holistic and alternative medicine may be acutely vulnerable to undue influence. There's been like a Time article that was written on it recently. And then also there's been a Guardian article that was written on how there's a combination of far right and far left persons that are utilizing the wellness communities in order to push their political agendas. And so one of the things I wanted to really look into was how this was happening. And so what I see, and maybe you have some further knowledge on this one, I bet you do.
I'm happy to chime in with what I know, but please.
Yeah, it's that from what I see, persons that are going into holistic medicine, alternative medicines, or even naturopathic medicine. I'm also an acupuncturist, so that's another area that has gotten, I guess you would call a hit, with undue influence from actors that seek to politicize medicine and healthcare. And it looks like what's happening is a lot of people who come into alternative medicine or holistic medicine will let me know, like, well, I'm not sure I really trust everything from my medical doctor, right? And so that's something I hear all the time is like, or perhaps I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry. Or some people are like vaccine hesitant. I'll get some vaccine hesitant individuals. I'll get people who come in and express all kinds of concerns about the standardized medical model, right, in Western medicine. And that's as someone who believes in patient autonomy, I want to respect that.
Yeah.
And I want to respect that however they wish to treat their body and is critical. And I hope as we go forward with AI and healthcare that we continue to respect someone's autonomy in medical decision making. But my concern is that can be used as kind of like a hook, if you will, like this distrust of the system can then be utilized to push political agendas. And it looks like that's what's happening. Now, I'll turn it over to you because I know that you've got more information on that.
Yeah. So in my research for the Cult of Trump, I learned about fourth generation and fifth generation psychological warfare. William Lind, Lind, wrote the first article I'm aware of on this psychological form of warfare. Michael Flynn, is well versed in this and did it on other countries purportedly. But the idea is to attack experts, to attack science, to attack institutions in order to create uncertainty and confusion and disorientation, in order to then program them with a new ideology that has certainty. So if you're a fossil fuel country or corporation like the Kochs, and you don't want government regulation that will make you curtail your profits because you have a libertarian ideology that wants to just make as much money as you can and buyer beware, you want to promote a distrust in science, that there isn't any proof that there's global warming, even though there's 98% of the world's climate scientists say there's incontrovertible proof. And we have all of these catastrophes happening that should never happen in the rate and extent, right? Likewise, if you're a Christian nationalist or a dominionist and you are teaching the world is 6,000 years old, you also want to be anti-science. And it's very intentionally moved to the left and the right to make them more extreme in order to develop more polarization and to drown out the middle. The enormous numbers of people are in the middle, but the extremists are occupying so much of the information warfare space, creating confusion. So when COVID was first identified as an airborne virus that was novel, and people are like, I don't know, I don't trust this new vaccine, I said, this is a new virus, never been seen before. We have this technology. I'm not equipped to be able to evaluate it. I have a very dear friend who's at Children's Hospital who has a PhD in public health. And when Elisa says she's getting it and she's giving it to her kids, I'm giving it to my kid. And I just said that publicly. It's like you have to go with people you trust who are smart, qualified. And that's another thing I want to say to listeners is like, what is this expert who's saying what they're saying? They have a PhD, but it's in English literature and they're talking about medical public health things. Like that is not a credential to trust at all, and be very, like there are experts and human beings, we depend on each other, and we can't depend on Google as the expert because search engines can be manipulated. There can be all kinds of agendas. So we really need to come back, I believe, to friends in real life that you meet in person, not just go after, followers and likes by all these strangers online. I mean, I have 76,000 followers on Twitter, what's X. Some of them I know, but most of them I don't know. Some of them are probably bots, some of whatever. But the point is I have friends and real people that I've gotten to know, and that's where I want most of my emotional and intellectual energy to be focused on, and not, strangers and with untested theories and such. But I do want to state categorically, people should be spending less time online, more time in nature, make sure they're sleeping, exercising, eating healthy foods, check out naturopathic physicians because to me that is so healthy. It's a healthy philosophy of approaching healthcare that isn't just, yes, I am for alternative, but I don't care about facts. You want the facts and you want to be open-minded to other treatment approaches. And I'm going to share one more quick story. I had a hernia procedure and I had the worst pain that apparently after the surgery, and I had shots and all kinds of, injections and everything. I saw a Japanese trained acupuncturist. She put a needle in a spot on my foot and the pain went away. Like, it was like, oh my God, how'd you do that? And it was like, oh my God, why did I allow all of these injections? Why didn't I think about this? But it was miraculous.
And I think that's the power of when we work together in medicine. And I think that was I've had a lot of really fortunate conversations here in the Seattle area. I'm in Washington State, and that's where I practice. And so, luckily, here in Washington State, we have collaborative healthcare. I see that Harvard is working more collaboratively with different alternative and holistic models. I like that. I like that there's a lot of larger institutions now, larger medical schools within the United States and abroad that are working with holistic models as well, because I think we could have so much more power in medicine, in healthy medicine, if we look at what works for people. And we know that there was some research done that they found like 2/3 of all adults are using some form of holistic medicines. But so many of them aren't telling their doctors because they're afraid of what their doctors are going to say. And wouldn't it be a great world where we both communicated to all our medical team? I love the team care approach. And then we all accepted each other for our strengths and what we could do for medicine. So you mentioned a few things that people can do. One, taking that pause in consumption of data. I think that that's really good for our minds. We've got so much saying, whether it be, neurochemicals that are stimulated through the constant clicks and constant likes. And, we definitely know that our neurochemistry becomes unbalanced when we stay online too much, when we don't go out into those natural settings, like you'd mentioned also, those go for a hike, go for a walk with a friend. There's a new program that was called Walk with a Doc, and I was just really excited about the idea of people just walking for health. And so there's a lot of different organizations across the country that are focusing more on time with other humans. So I think that's great. I really also liked your idea in your course was to pause when someone is starting to influence you. You probably can say it better than I can, but I believe what the message was that sometimes we'll be online and we'll start clicking on something, and then we click on something else, and then we click on something else, and we get down this, they call it the rabbit hole, but we get down this place where we're not really so sure of that first thing we clicked on and how we got to this place. And that's a really good time to just step away and ask ourselves, who are these people that are giving me this information, and what are their potential other motivations for that?
And especially if it's emotionally arousing, if it's trying to be fear-provoking or hate-provoking or anxiety or, those types of strong emotions, take a pause.
Right. And the American Psychological Association just came out in November 2023 with a great recommendation. It was a consensus statement called Using Psychological Science to Understand and Fight Health Misinformation, an APA consensus statement. At the end of it, it had 8 recommendations, and I won't go through them all. But I think
we'll
that
add it to the blog,
Great.
So you'll send me the link. But go on, please.
Great. Yes. So I think that it really looked into ways that individuals can start to protect themselves from health misinformation specifically. I would definitely say, if you're going to use a naturopathic doctor, for instance, make sure I mean, if you can, and we're not licensed in every state, but if find a licensed naturopathic doctor if you can,
Hmm.
or find out who your naturopathic doctor, if it's not in a licensed state, was trained through. Like who did they learn this? Was it an
Yeah,
online course? Did they spend time in a clinic? Uh,
right,
and so that's what you're looking for is who are these holistic professionals and what's their training.
right. I'm going to circle back if you don't mind. We have like 10 minutes or
Yeah, you
so
got it.
to go, but just to say, because it's tricky. You want to respect the client's confidentiality and autonomy, but you also want to do a little more probing and exploration too. So if somebody comes in and says, uh, I don't want the vaccination, it causes all kinds of problems, or it's going to put nanobots in my body and I don't want it, to say, I hear you. I'm curious, if you think back over your healthcare history, have you ever gotten a vaccination? Oh, yes, I've gotten vaccinations throughout my life. And you can go, aha, okay, that's really interesting. So tell me when you first heard the idea
Mm,
that a vaccination might give you a nanobot, and call their attention to it. In other words, direct people to the idea that they may have had their a phobia installed in their
mm,
mind without their conscious choice by an unknown actor or by a known bad actor, and explore it a little bit more. But I'm a big fan, as you know from taking my course, of educating people how to tell the difference between a legitimate source and an untrusty source that lies, that withholds vital information, that distorts information and such. And just be prepared to change your mind. Ask for evidence. The burden is on them to prove it, not on you to disprove what their claims are. I can't help but mention the Love Has Won documentary of this cult in Colorado where they were hawking colloidal silver for solving all the healthcare problems, and their leader, who says she's Mother God, is turning blue, getting more and more sickly, and nobody can say, maybe it's the colloidal silver. There's no evidence that there's any benefit. And in fact, it's a poison to put a heavy metal in your body because your body's turning blue. Anyway, she died a
mm,
horrible death,
mhm,
blue. And
mhm,
then the people thought she was going to come back to life because she was God. It was
mm,
just so sad to watch that. And then the last thing I just want to add in terms of positive, potentially positive alternative approaches, is I'm a big fan of clinical hypnotherapy.
okay.
And there's so much hypnosis being taught online
Mhm,
by people who have no credentials in mental health, proper training, the checks and balances. And again, as a clinician, I don't do hypnotherapy because I'm a cult mind control expert. I want to explain hypnosis, but I drew a line in the sand for just my credibility. Um, so I almost never do hypnotherapy. And if I do, it's with a camera and someone else in the room, and just to really make sure that everything is on the up and up with disclosure. Because if you're doing hypnotherapy, it's often not, that person can't bring a lawsuit
mhm.
if there's been hypnotic refreshment or anything like that. In any case, hypnotherapy is fantastic for pain control, but go to a trained mental health professional who knows what they're doing. And don't just go to someone who says they're a coach and they're trained in NLP or hypnosis and they say that they're great. It's your mind. Protect yourself.
Right, and I think when you learn the specific ways in which you can protect yourself, you
Hmm.
are more empowered to
Yes.
go forward with different strategies. So when you understand how to check the credentials, for instance, of the individuals, ask them questions. There has never been a time where a patient has walked into my office and asked me about where were you trained, so and so, tell me about your training, that I've been any way hesitant. If anything, I probably talk about it too much,
Mm,
because no one ever asked me.
mm.
But to ask the person questions. I don't think
Sure.
any person who's a licensed healthcare trained professional in this world
Right.
would have any hesitance to tell you exactly the questions that you're asking. And if they
Right.
do, or if there's any kind of like hedging around it, then that would be a red flag for me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so true. So, if you were being asked by the government administration for your recommendations for what we can do for the mental well-being of Americans, what comes to mind?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I think isolation is such a problem right now. Loneliness coming out of the COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
pandemic is on my radar. So it's definitely in the fields of loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
mental health, suicidality,
Mm-hmm.
and people really needing connection. Like
Right.
real, authentic connections. So the more we can make people, or help people, I should say, you don't want to make people, but you want to help people, right? Help
Sure.
people find trusted places where they can feel community support, collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
People really need to be listened to right now.
Yeah.
People come into my office and they want to talk about what they've been through and they want to be heard. And so
Yeah.
I think spaces where I've recently on the DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion front,
Mm-hmm.
I've been monitoring a lot of like the listening sessions that they're having
Mm.
to say like, okay, what do we really need in this area? And I know Washington State is working with DEI specifically to say we really need to listen to what people need
Mm-hmm.
in all areas of our communities. So I think
Mm-hmm.
feeling heard, feeling listened to, and feeling connected is
Yep.
going to be a real positive way to move on to the next step.
Yep. Definitely. So thank you for being you and, wanting to be committed to learning and growing, but also serving others, especially disadvantaged folks. As we wrap up, it's still January, which is Trafficking Awareness Month. And you mentioned in your bio that you have worked with some trafficking victims. Anything you want to say about that as we wrap up?
I think just that it is an important issue,
Hmm.
and that it happens more frequently than any of us would really understand
Mm-hmm.
without actually reading into it. Here
Mm-hmm.
in the Seattle area, we're a port city. There is definitely it's going on.
Yeah.
Uh, and people, I think, in general, think it's something that happens in other countries or happens in other places.
Right.
So once you start to actually evaluate the different types of trafficking that can occur,
Yes.
uh,
Labor
and
and sex are the two biggest categories. Yeah.
right, right, and then what leads people? I think I've heard at least one of your podcasts where you talked about specifically how do people get trapped into this,
Mm-hmm.
and so what factors? And then the other thing that I'm always a real big fan of yours on is this idea that we are all vulnerable to some form of undue influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's something that all of us could maybe do a better job of understanding is like we're all vulnerable to undue influence. We all have like a certain responsibility to
Mm-hmm.
learn what the tactics are and how to keep each other safe.
Yeah. Protect ourselves and our friends and our family and our community. Melanie Trowbridge, thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And thank you so much. And we'll draft a blog and put all kinds of links.
Okay.
And hopefully we will have elevated people's consciousness around how to seek out healthy health care and also how to think about the future with AI and technology. So thanks so much for being on the Influence Continuum.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Steve Hassan here. You know, it's been decades since my family rescued me from the Moonies. I've been at this for over 47 years. The need has never been greater. If you're able, please consider hitting the super thanks button below, and it'll help us to do better. Every penny will help us toward our goal of educating the planet about undue influence. Remember, it's your mind, only you should control it.